A warm welcome to you all. Jake, Crueley podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this transmission. I have a wonderful guest with me, Molly Kelsey. But before you introduce yourself, Molly, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work you were doing because it wasn't until we adopted Pippin, and Pippin is our kitten, 2 months ago that I really began to realize just how important it is that we like maintain and understand and like try to cultivate a great connection with our pets, like our felines, our kittens. Um, and I think for me as well, the relationship and like the camaraderie and companionship that Pippin has offered me in my life, I've found it to be so valuable. And for people like yourself who are working specifically with felines, I think it's incredible. So I am doing this for him. I want to try and understand kittens more. I want to understand how I could help him live a better life and try to understand him more. So without further ado, can you please introduce yourself for those listening to or watching this podcast, please?
Yeah, certainly. So my name's Molly. I live in Auckland, Aotearoa, and I work as a cat behavior specialist. And yes, that's a real job. I have a background in veterinary nursing and working in the veterinary industry for over 10 years now. And I recently went down the behavior route a few years ago after fostering kittens and cats for a number of years and just seeing and coming across cases of where their mental health was compromised and there were behavioral issues with cats coming into the vet clinic that weren't being addressed appropriately, and I wanted to do something about that. So I went back to uni, and a few years later we're here now, and I consult with people in New Zealand and also all over the world. I'm very lucky to have my job. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And we'll definitely delve into those topics that you just spoke about. But I want to learn a little bit more about you specifically before
Mm.
we get into the cat behavior. So I'm just curious to know, where did you grow up specifically? And did you have any experiences growing up that aligned you with the work that you were doing today?
Yeah, definitely. I was born in like Franklin County, so like South Auckland, and I lived my first few years of life on a lifestyle block. And we had some neighbors who had a dairy farm, and growing up, I always had pets. Like I never didn't. My parents got given two cats, two kittens, um, as a baby shower gift for when I was born. So I had animals from as soon as I was in this world. And I've lived in the UK for a little bit when I was younger, and then the rest of it's just been around East Auckland. I've only just moved over to the shore, so getting my bearings here. And I've always felt some sort of kinship with animals. They've always made me feel at home, and they just make, everything in life just a little bit more special. Things can get a bit samey like every day, and I feel like just animals just are kind of there to remind you to enjoy the little things in life and to not waste opportunities and to give everyone that you love all your attention, because their lives are so much shorter than ours, and they live their lives to the fullest with no apologies, and it's such an inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a photo of you as a child, as a young child with a cat. Could you just tell me about that photo?
Yes, that's Monty. He was my best friend when I was a child. Was one of the kittens that was given to my parents, and he was the typical Kiwi house cat. He went in and out whenever he wanted. He slept on my bed, and he would bring me gifts. So the gifts would be dead animals, and he'd leave them
Yeah.
on my pillow. And as a kid who loved animals, I was horrified. And my parents were like, "Oh, he's just showing you that he likes you." And I was like, "Is there any other way that we can like channel that like?"
Yeah.
So we were pretty inseparable at home. and I lost him when I was 15, and it really rocked me it was a while before I could have another cat in the house permanently. So yeah, he was very important to me.
Mm. I often contemplate death
Mm.
in a neutral way, and I feel like it makes me a better person in this life, and it really aligns me with what's important and what isn't. But I have obviously contemplated Pippin not being here, and just the thought of that, like that is a massive loss. And I've never had a fur baby or a pet or a companion. I call him son. Like I see him as my son, and so I guess I will be experiencing that. How did you deal with that? Like having experienced something like that?
I think giving yourself unlimited time to process it and not letting other people's expectations of what pet loss grief looks like kind of channel your recovery or change your path of recovery from it, because the loss is just as painful and significant to me as losing a human loved one. I know that's not popular with a lot of people, but for me, that is how I feel. I've lost people that I've loved, and it has affected me just as much, or, on the same level as losing cats, birds, dogs. It's for me, it doesn't get easier with each one, but I do find it a lot more comfortable to sit in the grief than I did initially, especially as a child. When you're growing up, it's kind of hard to get a handle on death as a child, because for you, life there's so much ahead of you, and everything is just possibilities. And with pets dying, a lot of people with their kids will just say things like, "Oh, they've gone to the farm," or
Yeah,
we had to
yeah.
rehome them. And I'm always a bit torn. I don't have human children, so I don't know what to say about that. But I'm always like, I feel like it's just a part of life, and like you said, it's a neutral thing. I think our culture has got a lot of shame and taboo around death as a topic, which is crazy to me because it happens to all of us. It's a common and guaranteed occurrence. So I feel like it's something that makes you grow as a person. Not a pleasant experience, but it does make you grow.
All right. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but
No.
it is what it is, I suppose. And where did you study? And for anyone aspiring to like work in your field, what does that process look like for them?
Yeah, so I went it the way of I did veterinary nursing and administration for years, and obviously I went to uni for that beforehand. And then with that background, I went and did postgraduate study via distance with a provider in the UK, because currently it's quite limited options here. You can go and do courses for dogs, but to do behaviour on its own, you're a bit more limited. So I went to uni via distance for that, and that was 2.5 years, I believe. Yeah. And then after that, I just started taking on clients and building up my experience. And I think all the years of experience just working with cats beforehand really helped. So I would say to anyone who's looking at working with animals, even not in a behavior capacity, just to get some hands-on experience before maybe going down the academic side, just so you know kind of what you're getting into, because it is an emotional field to be in, because you're dealing with living beings.
And where can they, I guess they could potentially volunteer at places. Would you recommend any places?
So a lot of sanctuaries and rescue groups are desperate for volunteers. You can go and volunteer your time at the actual centres. You can foster. They're always looking for fosters. You can volunteer to help with trap, neuter, return programs for cats that aren't pets or owned. And you can even do things like with Doc, doing things like going out and like helping count birds, things like that. There's so many things you can do. I like to do sanctuary trips where I take out a couple days and just go and stay at a sanctuary and work for a couple of days. And it's a really nice way to get exposed to a whole lot of different animals and to kind of get your hands dirty and get into the realities of what it's like looking after animals.
Yeah, it is. For me personally, I guess having Pippin, like having to like clean up after him because he makes a lot of mess. Like he's so curious. Like he likes to. We have reefs in the house, so he's always playing like with dangling flowers, and then he'll make a mess over here, and then obviously he needs to um, go number ones and number twos as well. So there's so much involved in being a. Well, how would you describe the relationship between you and a feline? Is it a companionship? Is it like an ownership? Is it a camaraderie?
I prefer companionship or guardianship because we are fully responsible for their quality of life. So that makes me think of more of like a guardian, but they have their own autonomy. And the whole thing of owning animals, it's more of a legal term. Um,
Mm.
so I do use it with people because that's what they understand. But personally, I say I've got pets, but they're like my companion animals. They're not my owned property.
Mm. And how would you describe like what it means to be a feline behavioral um, specialist?
It's holding people's hands as they navigate figuring out what a different species is doing and why. There's a lot of people that either don't understand or have been told conflicting information about how a cat should be, or they've got their own expectations from a previous cat. So there's a lot of laying down, hard truths about what cats actually need from us, that they don't owe us anything. If anything, we owe them insurmountable amount of care and love, and they give you that back tenfold, but sometimes it's not in the way people want. And yeah, just a lot of people that need to accept that sometimes you need to make changes in your home or how things are done in your house for your cat to be happy. It's a lot of that.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And being a professional in the feline field, and obviously, like this is a potentially a subjective question,
Mm.
but what do you think cats give or offer that other animals can't?
For me, I see a lot of the traits that make people amazing in cats. They have this determination to overcome things that I feel like a lot of us, we kind of need that boost to remind ourselves we're capable of things. And me especially, I'm very good at pumping others up myself. I'm like, ugh. And just their love of autonomy. They're very in their own space. They like doing what they want to do. They thrive on being able to make decisions. And that's the same for humans, like the human spirit and the cat spirit, I find are quite similar. We don't thrive being trodden down or forced into a box or made to do things. It doesn't make us happy. And cats are sort of the same in that way. And I think that's why I enjoy working with them and living with them, is I see a bit of myself in every cat.
I've noticed that Pippin, he's trying to he wants to go outside. Like I take him out, like we take him out, but we have like a cat lead. Just
Mm,
because we think he's potentially too young, and he is quite frigid. Like he's always on edge when he's outside, so he's always low to the ground. When is it a good time, especially because we live in a an urban area, so there's a
mm.
lot of we have neighbors and there's a lot of cars coming past and a lot of traffic and people. When is a good time to take the cat outside, or to let the cat outside, and how do we manage it? Like how can we help, like how could I help Pippin comfortably navigate into becoming comfortable outside?
Yeah, so with living in suburbia and also in New Zealand, we've got the risks to the cats being outside, and then we've got the risk to wildlife as well. So I say to people, if you are going to allow your cat outside access, look into things like cat-proof fencing or a catio so they can be outside, but they're not a danger to themselves and they're not a danger to others. New Zealand has quite a big culture of cats being allowed in and out whenever they want. It's how I was raised with cats, and it's how most people have cats in New Zealand. But overseas, a lot of people will have cats contained only. So it's really, if you want them to go outside, I mainly tell people harness training them to walk in a harness is really good because you can go outside with them and you know that they're not going to be in any immediate danger. So that's a really good way. If you don't want to put them on a leash or harness, which not everyone does want to do the training, I say to people if they have to go outside, get them in before the sun goes down and don't let them out until after the sun comes up because that's when their kind of predator brain is most active. They're more likely to roam, get into fights with other cats. It's harder for cars to see them. Living in suburbia, it's quite stressful having cats because there's so many other cats, and it's you
Yeah.
hear all these cats fighting, and I'm like, yeah, my cats aren't going outside. It's too stressful for me. So I'd say to people, if you are going to do it, just try and do it as safe as possible. And it's just to accept the risks, I guess, that things can happen that would never happen to an indoor cat. So it's personal choice.
We are currently in a cul-de-sac, so
Mm.
I've seen I've seen about six other cats, and there's maybe 20 like 20 homes on the whole cul-de-sac. So there are a lot of cats, and they all hang out together, but they're really old as well. So I think they've just been friends for so long. But do you think, like, what do you do personally with your kitty cats? Do you allow them to go outside, or do you keep them inside? Like, what would you suggest?
I used to allow outside access when I was living at home because my parents didn't want a fully indoor cat. And now I wouldn't let my cats outside unless they were contained to a catio enclosure, which is basically like a covered deck that's enclosed
Okay.
outside a window, outside on a deck. They're very popular in the States when they're very cool designs. Or cat-proof fencing, which is also called coyote fencing. They use it in the States. It stops animals getting over either way of the fence line, or training them to walk in a harness. That would be my kind of go-to for outside time. But I do know that's not everyone's cup of tea. Um, Indoor cats, you've got to provide what they go outside for inside. And sometimes that takes a bit of trial and error and, putting in some cat furniture and being a bit flexible with things. So I would recommend indoor only or, limited outdoor access, but it's got to be what's practical for you. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I guess I will have to, well, have a conversation with my partner and see where we want to go
Mm.
from here. Having heard what you've just spoken about, and so we actually got Pippin off Trade Me. Um, we drove up to Auckland, and they had the litter there, and the litter they were all like laying together, but Pippin was he was like in the corner. He was so scared that so they had the whole litter together, and then Pippin was like in the corner, scared by himself. And I think that's what drew us to Pippin, or maybe Pippin drew us to him. Um, but are there like any big differences between adopting adopting a kitten from the SPCA or like Paws for Life versus adopting a newborn kitten?
By newborn, do you mean like a kitten that's really young, like newborn, like less than a week old? Do you mean that? Or do you mean like from a breeder? Do you mean?
Yeah, I guess from a breeder, but I also think I'm just curious to know, like, is there a specific time we should adopt kittens from like SPCA or the Pause for Life, and is that different to just like a litter of Trade Me?
Yes, so there's no regulation really in New Zealand for breeding cats. You can get a license online. You don't get audited. So a lot of people sell on Trade Me, and the most common practice is they leave their mum at 8 weeks of age, and that can be due to resources and rescues. They don't have time for kittens or the space for kittens to stay with their mums to 14 weeks, which is what I often say to people, like 12 weeks, I think is a good time for them to leave because they've had time to learn from their litter mates and their mum how to be a cat, basically. And a lot of rescues don't have that luxury of waiting that long. They need to get these kittens desexed and into new homes to make room for all these other kittens. So they often do 8 weeks. A lot of breeders do 8 weeks or 10 weeks. I wouldn't do earlier than 8 weeks. And I mean, I've had kittens that were younger than that, but that's because they were strays or rescues that were brought into my clinic or I was fostering. But if you're looking to get a cat for yourself, 8 weeks would be the absolute earliest.
I don't know if you know anything about it, but well, actually, I could just ask your thoughts on like what are your thoughts on like your general thoughts on like cat farming or kitten farming, and is there like some type of black market, or is it like good for their well-being to just be continuously farmed in that manner? It's, to me personally, I have no idea, but it seems sad, and it doesn't seem like it's a wise thing to do.
Mm. Well, I often think about how my cats live in, like when we have cats, how they live in our home. And then I'm like, you compare it to a cat who's used for breeding on a cat farm or kitten farm. They're used to make money. Um,
They're like prostitutes almost.
well, yeah, without any consent, they're just like, this is
Yeah.
what you're doing now. I mean, it's a bit more nuanced than that, but
Yeah.
I mean, there are breeders who they say they breed for the right reasons. And I do know there's some people that will breed certain breeds of cats because people want a particular breed, say a Bengal cat or a ragdoll. Um, but from what I've seen is no matter the breed, there's always going to be problem behaviors. So unless you are very, very set on a particular breed for whatever reason, I can't tell you what not to do. I always say people rescued is if you can rescue, do it, because you're part of the solution. Where breeding cats and adding more cats is just creating less homes for these cats that are being rescued. And just the cost as well. Like some of these cats you get off Trade Me are thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's like a ripoff.
And a lot of the time people don't see where these kittens have been raised. They
Mm.
don't know their socialization, if they've had health checks. And people can say what they want online and say, we do this and this, but unless you're physically there, how do you know? I've dealt with cats or worked with owners who have got cats from breeders and they've had a lot of behavioral issues. And these people are distraught because they're like, I got this breed because I was told it wouldn't have issues, or I got this breed because it was supposed to be calm or friendly, all these things. Like there's no guarantee because they're individuals and their upbringing doesn't get overpowered by the breed. There's so many factors that goes into what makes a happy cat or a cat that is likely to have problem issues, and just because a cat comes from a breeder isn't gonna make that go away.
How are they able to, like, how do you justify a cat's worth? Like, in your opinion, how can they have two cats and say, well, this one's 500 and I will put this one at 2,000? What are they judging that on?
It's often looks and what people will pay. I mean, if someone's gonna pay $3,000 for a ragdoll, well, they're gonna charge $3,000 because someone will pay it. I've never paid for a cat in my life. Mine have always been on the found on the street or in a car, and so I wouldn't know. I've never shopped around for a cat. But I mean, they all have the same, health commitments. Some exotic breeds even more so. Breeds that have got squished faces have more care issues. Cats that are shorter in stature, like munchkin cats, have additional issues with spine and joints. So if anything, some of these, specialty breeds come with added costs. So I know people go, I buy a breed because it's supposed to do this and this and this, but there's no guarantee, and they're just as likely, if they go outside, to be, say, hit by a car or break a leg or get, cancer. There's no real, I don't know. I think a lot of it is just how they look, to be honest. A lot of people go, I like the way they look. And then that's kind of the deciding factor for how high people will pay.
Yeah, I wonder, like, so let's say someone has adopted a kitten, or they've potentially moved homes, like how should we approach bringing like a newly adopted kitten home? Like, because with Pippin, he was so scared. He was so scared for about 2 days. 2 days he'd like just hide in the corner. He'd continuously meow. He would just hide away, and it was really sad for us to experience that, because we just wanted to reassure him that he was okay, and we just wanted to take care of him, and we want what's best for him. So how should someone go about bringing home a new kitten?
Yeah, so depending where the kittens come from, if you've just found them on the road, then this probably isn't going to be what to do. But if you're you've adopted from a center, or you're buying them from a breeder, or wherever you're getting them from, have all your supplies ready before you even get them. And have them, I like to set up a room where it's just the cat's room, because a whole new house is quite overwhelming. So starting off with just a room, even for a few days, just so they can decompress from all the changes, new environment, new people. They've probably left their mum and their siblings. So much has changed. The only constant is themselves. So if you keep the same food, if it's appropriate food, keep the same food, same litter. And what I like to do is, if you can, take one of your pieces of clothing and just put them around the room so they get used to your scent. Maybe bring something from their previous place, like a blanket that's got their littermate scent on it, just so they've got those familiar smells, because sense of smell is very important to a cat's assessment of an environment. And in that note, I don't know if you've heard of a product called Fellaway. It's a chemical copy of a pheromone that kind of comforts cats and makes them feel familiar. It's excreted through some glands, and that you often see cats rubbing on door jambs and on your legs. They're actually putting those chemical messages on there. So this product is a chemical copy. So you plug a diffuser into the wall, and then that goes into the room, and it just creates like a familiar, calming environment. So creating that home base is very important. And setting up a routine is also really important, because cats enjoy predictability. They like knowing that they are going to have food, or someone's going to come through the door, in the morning, at night. And just going slow, going at their pace. Some kittens will be rearing to go out the door straight away and will be like, please play with me straight away. Other kittens, like Pippin, will need a bit longer to kind of unpack how they're feeling about everything and get the confidence to explore. So it's kind of just, taking them on a case-by-case basis, because they're all individuals. And some cats will be very shy for a couple of days, and then it's like a switch flicks and they become like this little Energizer bunny, and people are like, I this is a different kitten. But that's just them processing what's happened. So it's kind of just taking their cues and going at their pace, and building up positive associations with you from the beginning. So lots of play, getting on their level, like sitting on the ground, not standing over them, and just, making things enjoyable for them as much as you can.
Yeah, when we came back, I took my jersey off, and because we had a little how would you call it? How would you describe it? It's like a cat bag. Kind of
Mm.
sounds wrong, but yeah, a cat holder. And we actually, yeah, we used that jersey for a couple of days, and what I noticed was he loved to just go and sit on it, and then he'd also sleep on it. And now he's starting to bite a lot, and he's starting to do his little bunny kicks. Like
Yeah.
it's so cute, but it can also, like, he's not. I know he's not biting to hurt me, because they're painful, obviously, because he has razor sharp teeth. But I'm just curious to know, like, why he's doing that. He doesn't do it too hard, but why does he do that? And why has he, like, just started doing that?
So he's probably gaining confidence. And like with puppies, kittens investigate things with their paws and their mouth. They can't ask us, what is this? They have to investigate it for themselves. And also, there's that function of play serves as a way to practice predatory behavior. So they play with other cats to get better, that when they go hunting, they can be more efficient at it. So that grabbing and that bunny kicking, they use that when bringing down prey to gain food. So they'll be playing with you, but for us, it's inappropriate. So I often say to people, give them toys that they can do these actions on that are appropriate. And if you can avoid using your hands and feet as toys, I know it's really tempting to be like, yeah, and you do like this. I've done it in the past. I think everyone has. But they don't know that at a certain point you don't want them to do that anymore, because you've showed them from the beginning that that was okay. And then suddenly they've grown and you're like, no, stop it. And they're like, but it was fine for the first month. Like, why is this suddenly an issue? You've got to be consistent. And if they do grab you or bite you, just redirecting them with a different toy and then praising them for going for the right thing. Ignoring redirecting what you don't want will work a lot better than any sort of punishment, because cats don't learn very well with punishment.
I love how it's actually our fault, right? Instead of blaming the cat, like, why are you biting me? Get off me. Or could you stop doing that? It's actually, well, we've kind of allowed that behavior, and that's been normalized for them. So, yeah, thank you for that, because for me, I'm like, well, why are you doing this, son? Like, but to now know that it's my fault, and then to now know what I need to do, I will do that. And when they are doing things, so let's say they always jump up on the counter where there's an oven, where there's hot things.
Yeah.
What is the best way to go about teaching them not to jump on there?
This is a very common issue people come to me with, and it's usually with kittens, because they're like, oh, I can jump up here. This is great. So there's a few ways to approach it. One way is to give them acceptable high places to go. So I often suggest to people to put a good cat tower near, but far enough away from the kitchen bench. And whenever they use that, they get a treat. But if they go on the bench, you literally just pick them up, place them on the ground, and then ignore them, or you redirect them off with a toy. If that doesn't work, if they're still going for the bench, because the bench smells like food, and they know that that's kind of where all the magic happens, where the food magically appears. And so another way you can do things that doesn't cause harm or do anything is just some double-sided sticky tape. It doesn't feel very nice on their paws, and I just get people to put that in stripes on the bench. And usually they go on that once and they're like, oh, this bench feels awful. Or I had a client who just she made her benches wet. She just sprayed some water on the bench, and the cat jumped on there and was like, oh my God, my paws are all wet. And the cat never jumped on there again. You could also use tin foil, but some cats find the noise quite stressful, so I don't often use that. Other ways you can do things is just to make the kitchen like a cat-free zone. So what you can do is kind of just whenever they cross like a line, you direct them out, and they learn that they only get attention and things when they're out the kitchen, or you only feed them when they're out of the kitchen. Mainly it comes down to that consistency, and you got to give them what they're looking for, which is attention and or food and or a high up place. So if you can give them those things in an appropriate way, then that's going to reduce the likelihood that they do seek out the bench as somewhere to explore.
Yeah, that's potentially why Pippin he sleeps up on top of the couch
Mm.
where our heads would typically be, and he has a cat bed. But he was sleeping on there at the start, like at the beginning, but now he sleeps on top of the couch, and maybe that's because it's a higher place. And now they're so curious. Like he goes into the like after we have a shower, he'll go into the shower. He'll try and like jump on the toilet. And he'll do like all of these things. Should we keep him out of bathrooms? Should we only like keep them contained to like specific rooms that are like neutral in a way?
It's really up to you. I mean, if there's like a safety issue, like if you often have hot strainers on the bathroom bench, then I'd be like, okay, probably that's just tempting fate with a cord
Yeah.
dangling, then I wouldn't. But I mean, if you're comfortable with them being in there and you're reasonably confident that they're safe, I don't see an issue with it. It's mainly things like a hot stove that I get concerned about. Or if people have, like spa pools or things like that, things that are just risks inherently. I have some people that don't let their cats in their bedroom because they disrupt their sleep. And providing you give them what they need in another room and they're, comfortable and happy sleeping there, then I don't have a problem with that. I know people might think that's awful. They're like, how can you say to people it's okay to not let them sleep on your bed? But I've got
Yeah.
clients who, their health suffers if they don't sleep properly. So it's kind of, finding a compromise a lot of the time. And often cats seek us out on the bed is because we're warm. So giving them a heat source in a room is often all you really need, and giving them a lot of attention before bedtime, and an activity to do to keep them busy is often really all you need to do to kind of block off that room.
How do you go about giving treats to your cats? Because we give Pippin treats maybe like once a week,
Mm.
just like 10 little bite size bickies. Um, and do they get fat from treats, or is that just some misconception? And like how do cats? Is there like a connection between treats and cats being like overweight and like fat?
If they aren't active enough to, burn through the excess calories, then yes, it is likely they will form, excess body weight. But like with anything, if you're keeping them active and you're adjusting their normal food intake for the number of treats without compromising the nutrients they're getting, like you still want to make sure the bulk of their food is their food. But like I use treats for training and for shaping behaviors, and I often give a lot of treats, but it's for a reason, and the cat's active for it. I'm not sitting there and just being like, here's a bowl of temptations, and then they're just like eating it. The way I give treats is it's usually the cat needs to be doing something that I want them to do. So say I've got a cat who gets freaked out if a doorbell rings. If they don't freak out, I'll toss them a treat for them to go and get. And they'll learn that, oh, okay, when I'm calm and someone rings the doorbell, if I do that enough times, they'll get the message that it's okay and I can just chill out. So if they've done something or they're doing something that you like, then that's a good time to give a reward. And I like to throw them because they also get that exercise of running to find it. They get
Yeah.
that dopamine release of, oh, I caught it, yay. And their brain releases dopamine. And so it's a lot more satisfying than just eating out of your hand. And with things like eating out of your hand, cats have very poor close up eyesight. I don't know if you've ever noticed Pippin like trying to find food that's like right in front of his face, and you're
Yeah.
like, it's right there. Like, how can you not see it? So if you've got it on your hand, sometimes they'll be like looking for it and they'll get a bit annoyed. And also with some cats who don't want to be up close to people all the time, only having the food in your hand, it's kind of like you have to come near me to get the food. So there's a potential risk to you getting this food. So some cats might not bother, they might walk off, and then you're like, well, this cat doesn't like treats, then you stop doing it. And really it's the cat was like, I'm not comfortable being close right at this moment. Whereas if you tossed it, they'd still get that positive association with you without the risk.
And you can almost toss anything and they'll do their big eyes
Yeah,
and
they
then
love
run after it.
movement. Yeah, their eyes are very tuned for movement. As a, as a very good predator, they're made to capture things that are moving very fast.
Yeah, I'd like to do a brief breakdown of some services you provide,
Mm.
and just get like a general understanding of what they are, and how listeners understand as well. So, um, a general consultation, what does that entail?
So that one there is for where there isn't a behavioral issue, but there could be. So say people are bringing a baby home and they want to get their cat ready so that when the baby arrives, it's not a huge shock. And the cat gets stressed, all those sorts of things. Or people are moving house and they want to make sure the move goes as smoothly as possible for the cat. I've had clients who've had cats who have been made to be indoors only because they've had a leg amputated, or have lost sight. And so they've had to make modifications to their home to make it more appropriate for them, or even aging cats making modifications so that they can do the things they love, but it's not as taxing on their joints. So adding like steps to things and changing the heights of things like that. I also work with people with kittens, just doing socialization, getting them used to different noises and experiences so that as they grow up, not as much phases them and they don't get as stressed out by new things. And then just things like basic training cats to go into carriers and learning tricks and things like that. That's mainly what the general consults are used for.
Yeah, and you also have behavioral assessments as well. And as I guess I'll ask a follow up question once we go through these. So the behavioral assessment service.
Yeah, so behavioral assessment packages I use for cats or cats with a problem behavior. So a behavior that's a problem is one that is either disruptive to people or it's harmful to others. And that can be things as simple as a cat who scratches the couch, or you get down to cats who are displaying signs of aggression, biting people, cats who are house soiling, marking, those sorts of things. And I work with people to kind of break down, what's happening, why is it happening, going through basic, cat behavior, what is normal, what isn't, and then ways that we can help mitigate the behavior, and just working with people one to one to help their cats live a happier life and also happier for their owners, because a lot of these behaviors can be quite unpleasant to deal with.
Yeah, just a footnote there. I'm not too sure if you can hear the dogs barking, but the neighbors' dogs are going really, really hard. So my apologies for that. And so the final service you provide is education.
Mm. Yeah, so I do workshops and talks with so rescue organizations. Like I did recently one with the SPCA in Mangere, doing some low stress handling and recognizing signs of stress in cats. I work with vet clinics, teaching low stress handling and how to make their clinics more cat friendly. And I'm hoping to get into presenting at schools, just teaching kids about how to respectfully interact with cats and how to spot an unhappy cat, all those things, just to keep the kids safer and the cats safer as well, because a lot of people who have kids have cats and sometimes they don't go together very well.
Yeah, maybe this is just my perception of it, but I feel like the general person doesn't spend enough time like engaging in information and like conversation such as this. From my experience anyway, growing up, my family, like I put my family on the block here, my family, never investigated or try to like learn about cats and how we could best bring them a life of well-being and comfort. So it's interesting, like just speaking with you and learning about all these things. It's making me see this whole entire like relationship in a different light, and how we best engage with um, kitty cats. And you spoke about the services you provide. So I'm curious to know, which is the most popular service and why do you think that is?
Behavioral assessments, yep, most popular every week. And like you said, a lot of that comes down to we just don't know how to meet our cat's needs. We don't know what their needs are. We have this perception or this outlook of them from growing up and what we've been told and previous cats. And yeah, we often kind of paint all cats with the same brush, or we go, our family cat didn't need this or didn't want this. So all my future cats are going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And we expect a lot of cats. Like, cat ownership now is at an all-time high. New Zealand is the second in the world for cat ownership. So especially in densely populated areas, we're getting more and more cats, which is added stress because they're not meant to live on top of other cats all the time. So there's just a lot of human created problems with cats. And often people don't have the tools to manage them on their own, which is just education. Yeah.
So in 2 weeks, I'm going to Queenstown. Our household is going to Queenstown, and I'm very reluctant to go. Like, obviously, I'm going to go, but the thought of Pippin being here, and we're going to have a carer for him, but I think like just the thought of him being here and me and my partner not being here, and I hope that he is going to be okay, and I want to do everything I possibly can to make sure that he is all right, or he can, um, I guess, just work through things to the best of his ability with what we put in place. So, like, everyone is busy, right? Like, people are working, people are traveling, people are getting away on the weekends. Like, how do we best take care of our cats when we're not home? Like, let's say we're away for the night or for a weekend.
Yeah. So giving them lots of things to do. So things like puzzle feeders instead of food bowls. So they're kept occupied longer. Having a routine that the carer follows as well. So if they get fed at 8 in the morning, if they can get fed at 8 in the morning while you're away, that's great because the cat's like, okay, that thing hasn't changed. So that's one less thing to worry about. And then things like the Fallaway plug-in diffusers, that's also really good to help just comfort them a little bit. Plug it in a few days before you leave. And because they know when you're going away, they're like, can tell, they're like, what are you doing with that bag? And they're like, why is everything different? Um, yeah, so they know they'll like sit in your suitcase and you're like, I get it. You don't want me to go. And then I often recommend to people, if they're getting a carer or a house sitter, have them come before while you're there, so that it's not someone who shows up at the house while you're not there and they come in the house and your cat's like, this has never happened before. My owner's always been here whenever someone is here. So just having them come over and, toss some treats to him or give him a meal and play with him, just so he, gets a bit of an intro to that person beforehand, is a really good way to make things a bit less of a big change when you do go away.
All right, yeah, we'll definitely do that then, especially if it's going to help Pippin.
Mm.
And is that how you would engage new people meeting the kitty cats? Like, how do we best go about introducing new people?
Mm,
Like, let's say someone's moving in, or you're having a
mm.
visitor for a week or a couple of days.
Yeah, so it really depends on the cat. Some cats will have a new person come into the house and it's like they've been there the whole time. They'll walk up to them, they'll rub against them, they'll elicit attention and curl up next to them. Other cats will hide in your cupboard in the bedroom and won't
Yeah.
leave for hours after the
Mm.
person's gone. So it's kind of just working out what the individual cat needs from that person when they visit. I often tell people the best way to get a cat to like you when you go to a house is to ignore them, because cats like to control interactions. So if a person walks up to them and stands over them and sticks their hand down, a lot of cats will find that really confronting and they won't really like that. They'll give a bad first impression. Whereas someone who doesn't make direct eye contact, which is threatening to a cat, and just walks and sits down, and maybe you give them some treats and the person tosses them for the cat. So they're like, oh, cool. When this person sits, they leave me alone. I get food. Everyone's happy. And then they're like, okay, cool. I'm going to warm up to this person a lot quicker than someone who comes up and tries to pick me up straight away. It's kind of just letting them dictate the speed of introductions and not forcing them to spend time with people, because it's not going to make them like the person. It's just going to make them associate the person with something scary.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, Man, I think it was about a year ago. I lived at this specific house, and I was visited by about 4 or 5 different stray cats throughout the year, and it was at a time where I was like really down and like really sad, almost depressed. I'm just curious to know. Well, these stray cats, they would come, like they would do that rubby thing on the doors, like outside on the plants, and then I'd give them food. Like I went down and bought food for them because they'd come at like different times, and some of them would even come into the house. Like I've never met these cats before, and they would just come in. So I'm just curious to know, like, what are your thoughts on stray cats in general, and is it just a coincidence that they just show up?
So it depends what you define as stray. A lot of cats who people say, oh, this cat's turned up at my house, it might be living 2 doors down and it's allowed outside access. And it's like, it makes the rounds. It does a perimeter sweep. It goes to
Right.
like the houses that are in its territory. And if they find that, some cats, if they find that someone's left a meal or a door's open, some cats are confident enough to walk in and just have a sit for a while, and then they leave and you're like, what just happened? Like, this cat just walked into my house.
Right.
And then you've got stray cats who aren't under the care of anyone in a house. So people that have moved and left cats, or cats that have been dumped, or just people that have cats that aren't desexed and they've had litters and the litters are not living in a house. Those sort of cats, they'll seek out people because people will have food and they've had interactions with people before where they've gotten food or they've gotten shelter. So they'll seek those out. So it really depends on the cat. But yeah, I'm a big fan of desexing, because these cats that do live stray lives suffer. It's a very harsh life. It's very dangerous. It's very hard to find food and shelter and safety. And a lot of them are, well, all of them are there because of human negligence, just not looking after their own cats or just letting them run around like not desexed. And we don't feel the effects, but the cats do.
Yeah, I love how, you know, me putting my perception on it, like my take on it, like, oh, these cats are here, because I'm sad, and they're like somehow the universe is like sending them to me. But it's so funny, like I feel used and abused now. But I'm just kidding. But what are your thoughts on desexing? Because we haven't had Pippin desexed yet, but we did say that we'll wait till he gets a little bit older.
Mhm.
And I guess we'll have to have a discussion around if we will allow him to go outside. But in general, when should we desex a cat, and why should we desex a cat?
Yeah, so I guess first off, the reasons why, main one is population control. cats can breed from as early as 4 months of age.
Wow.
So you'll have kittens who have
Wow.
litters and they're kittens. I've had foster kittens who have kittens themselves, which is
Wow.
crazy to me. Their bodies haven't even finished growing and they've got babies, which is, it's scary. And then we've got things like behavioral issues that arise from cats being entire. So roaming is increased, marking behaviors like spraying is increased, fighting is increased. Cats are more likely to develop things like certain types of cancers, like ovarian cancer, testicular cancer, things like that. And so those can shorten lifespan as well. And just a safety thing as well. It's with them not roaming as far if they're outside. That's also good. And then age to do it. Different rescues and clinics will have their own policies. I know like the SPCA has, once they reach a certain weight, they get desexed. So it's not really dictated by a set age. It's more of a weight thing. A lot of clinics will be 6 months is the earliest they'll do. But again, rescues don't have that luxury of waiting 6 months to desex a kitten.
Right.
So I say as long as they're healthy, they're at a good body weight, and you're going to a vet that you trust, and you can provide the aftercare. I prefer to say fixed by 5 months, because then you're kind of making sure that they're not going to have an accidental litter. And it's just once it's done, it's done. And I find that if you leave it till, they're over a year old, some problem behaviors can get established, like marking, and it's harder to fix those once they've started.
All right. Yeah, that is a discussion I'm definitely going to have later today. I think we should definitely go and get Pippin desexed. And how does it feel receiving great reviews from clients? And I actually have one here, and I just want to read it out for you.
Yeah.
Well, for the listeners. Our cat freaked out over lockdown and decided not to live with us anymore. Molly was great at suggesting ideas to get him back. He is now back with us, settled and happy. A great result. How does it feel receiving great reviews from clients?
That's really nice. I love helping people and their pets, and having it in words. And it's people that aren't my friends or family or
Yeah.
people at work. It's a bit
Yeah.
different. And these people come to me in a very vulnerable state. It's often a last resort for a lot of people, which is slowly changing. It used to be the same thing with dogs. People would wait until things got bad before seeking help. So often I see people when they're on their last straw, basically. They're like, if we can't fix this, our cat's going to be rehomed or put to sleep. And so being able to, repair those relationships and change the outcome it's really nice to know that I've helped.
Yeah, beautiful. I actually read all that you showed, and I was like pleasantly pleased and just happy for you reading those, and it made me even more excited to come and speak with you. Just a couple more things. What are your thoughts on ending the life of a cat? You just spoke about that, so I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on that, and is there are there specific moments when it is acceptable to?
Yeah, it's a very personal thing. For me, it comes down to quality of life. Are they able to live a life where they're happy? Are they free from pain, discomfort? Are they able to enjoy the things that a cat enjoys? When they're not able to, then I look at it and go, okay, is it going to be kinder to do this or this? And there are situations where people don't have the financial means to get something sorted that isn't, a life or death thing, but if it's left, it will be. And I haven't been in that situation myself, but I've worked with people in the vet clinics who have been, and I don't think it makes them a bad person. I know that sometimes, there'll be things like a hit by car, and a lot of people these days are living week to week, and getting a leg that's broken in a few places pinned and set is going to cost thousands. And not many people just have that sitting on the side. So it's either, do you let this cat walk around with a broken leg, or do you euthanize if surrendering to the clinic isn't an option? And then I think it's better for the cat to be euthanized than left in pain and discomfort. So unfortunately, euthanasia isn't always when they've reached an old age. I had a cat who I had to have euthanized at 6 years old, and it came out of nowhere, and there was nothing that could have been done. And I felt a lot of guilt for a while, just because of, I think his age was just the main thing. And I would think, could I have done something different? Did I really need to do that? But I know that I did make the right decision for him. And that's the main thing, is you have the privilege and the responsibility of making that decision. So even though it's uncomfortable, we have a responsibility for them as their carers to keep them out of pain, and to, let them go when they're not living the life that they deserve.
Absolutely. And I guess, yeah, it is a perceptual decision, but also, I guess, what you believe in, like your worldview and the framing of your experience as a human. And I hope I never have to make those kind of difficult decisions. And the final two questions I ask guests, because I want to celebrate guests, I want them to celebrate themselves. I want us to celebrate with them. I want to normalize self-celebration. So I want to ask you, what are you most proud of doing in this life?
Goodness me. For me, it was going down a career path that I knew wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be rolling in money. I knew I was going to have to work really hard, work a lot of hours, make some difficult decisions, deal with people not on their best days. And for me, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I'm so glad that I didn't, do a job that would have been safer or more suited to the financial climate. So yeah, I think just that's probably it, is just doing what I wanted to do, like what I felt my purpose was, and just following through with that.
And the final question is, what is your hope for the world and future generations?
To be kinder to one another. I feel like there's a lot of hatred and fear of those we don't understand or agree with. And I feel like the world would be a much better place if we could just take care of one another, whether we're people, animals, our planet. It's a finite resource, and I feel like, we're not treating the planet like a friend. So yeah, just being kinder to one another. I think that would be the biggest shift, I think, as people.
Yeah, beautifully said. The incredible Molly Kelsey, the cat counselor. Thank you so much. I really am so grateful to have people like you in this world, especially being a cat owner now and a cat guardian, companion. So it's really opened my eyes to take a look at your work, and now to speak with you. I hope I can implement what you've taught me and taught us, and in my relationship and companionship with Pippin. And I guess I just want to wish you well on your journey, and may your life continue to flourish, and may we all begin to be more conscious of our relationships with our kitty cats, with our animals in general, and I think with ourselves and with each other. So thank you so much for your time. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me, and yeah, give Pippin a pat for me. Thank you.